when we are doing the will of our true self, we are inevitably doing the will of the universe. In magic, these are seen as indistinguishable. That every human soul is in fact one human soul. It is the soul of the universe itself. And as long as you are doing the will of the universe, then it is impossible to do anything wrong.
There is this connection between everybody and his total environment.
Every human soul is in fact one human soul. It is the soul of the universe itself.
That scientists tell us that there's no meaning at all in everything we see out there. That's external reality which can have no relation to human consciousness. Who writes the great books? It isn't we who sign our names. What is an artist is a man with antennae who knows how to hook up the currents in the cosmos or whatever.
My name is Revel Rosz, and this is Pragmagick. In this podcast, we will journey through the investigation and application of metaphysical means to enhance and inspire what I consider to be the great unifying purpose of our short human existence, the creative process. And it's my intention to learn and reveal exercises that hex those inner oppressive thought patterns, as well as exorcising those lurking psychic vampires. So join me as I consort the unseen as means for getting the fuck out of creative stagnation. Stagnation that bewitches each and all of us, artists or not. And we're back. Excuse my absence over the last couple weeks. I had told Tommy that this interview was supposed to be out on Thanksgiving Day, which it was intended to. I got caught up in some self-loathing on my lonely Thanksgiving. Jokes aside, I pulled a muscle recently in my chest that has laid me out, so to speak. I'd like to blame it on the nefarious things of unseen beings that is keeping me away from, bringing you this quote-unquote content. But alas and alack, it was somatic and boring and physical, and I am yet still human, unfortunately. I just wanted to tell you how excited I am to finally get to speak with Tommie Kelly. I've been following him long before I started this podcast as someone that was just an astute observer or listener of occult type things. And Tommie's always been just a great paragon of chaos magic and its beneficial and pragmatic, healthy servings. Me as a practitioner and as somebody that has been wrestling with my identity as a chaos magician, which I inherently am, I'm the first to admit, he really enlightened me on some aspects that I was abjectly forgetting. And his 40 Servants deck, he basically created his own arcana, has been really cool, really beneficial. And I think it's a model that has worked brilliantly. There's, close to 3,000 practitioners in a 40 Servants Facebook group that use them as part of their daily ritual. And his ability to not accept monetary value only with his magic and his art has been just a brilliant addition to this community and this way of thinking. I was a little sluggish in the beginning. Tommy is in Ireland, and our phone chat happened at like his afternoon time, my on 3 hours of sleep, early morning time. No excuse, and it evens itself out. Just forgive my sluggishness in the beginning. So without further ado, here's my conversation with the Irish gentleman, the chaos magician. Oh, I'm sorry. The artist, the writer, the musician who uses chaos magic within his realms of expression, Tommie Kelly.
It depends, I suppose, on what point of the timeline we could start. Actually, when I found out about chaos magic was through Grant Morrison and that disinformation lecture that he did around about year 2000, 1999, 2000, something like that. And without, being too hyperbolic or whatever, it was literally changed my life having seen that. Previous to that, I did know who Grant Morrison was, obviously, but I wasn't. When I was into comics, when I was quite young, and then kind of, as a lot of people do, kind of distanced myself from them for, most of my 20s. And then when I came back, granted, I had done The Invisibles and stuff like that. So it was through the kind of interim years that I had been away, in the barren years, in my years I spent in comic desert, that had been done. So I knew him from like early days of Arkham Asylum and Zenith and all of that kind of things. But so when he talks about chaos magic and that, are you aware of that? I'm sure you're aware of that. Everyone's aware of that video.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I wanted to relate to you with that because my introduction was his introduction to the Disinfo Book of Lies.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah. So when he was talking about sigilism and his practice, which I didn't see the Disinfo thing until a lot later, but, we both, I guess, were pretty... instigated, I should say.
Is that him. Introduction? Is that his pop magic?
Yes.
Is that essay, pop magic? Yeah,
totally. Where he talks about the spare kind of technique of sigilism.
Sure. Yeah. That's for people who haven't read that. It's actually on his website.
Oh, cool.
He has that. Yeah.
Well, and
he says he's quite embarrassed by the Disinfo lecture. That he can't watch it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, well, I can understand that. When he's drunk and he's high and he's
right.
It's not something he's used to doing, and I can understand that if looking back, and particularly it's 20 years ago nearly now. So I mean, I would hate to look back at something I did quite publicly 20 years ago, high and drunk and talking about magic and masturbation and all of those things.
Funny enough, you recently just met him. Is that right?
I did. Yeah, I met him within the last 2 weeks, week and a half, something like that. 2 weeks. Yeah, he was in Dublin, doing in Forbidden Planet, which is the big comic shop here, doing a signing for the release of the new Green Lantern comic or whatever.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it was just, I don't know how he ended up being in Dublin for the release of such a big thing, but he was. But he was saying that he's in Ireland an awful lot. He just doesn't get asked to do anything, which I thought was really strange. But I suppose, like I said, it's the other thing as well. Like how do you ask Grant Morrison to do something? You can't just rig him. You can't. He's not a huge social media presence or anything. So
yeah,
I think it's somewhat his own fault that he doesn't get asked to more parties. He should make himself more available, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that's amazing. It seems like a full circle thing because not only were, you're also a comic creator.
Yeah, and the great thing about it, for kind of jumping the story slightly, is that I was able to give him the 40 Servants deck, and he was bad keen and excited about it, and he made me sign it and the box and all that kind of thing.
That's
that's
awesome.
That's kind of cool. That doesn't happen that often in your life. That if you can see it from going. From the video, from seeing Disinfo, then to years later to here's what I did with that video. Here's what I came up with, and him being cool with it. So
yeah, I'm so excited to talk about the 40 Servants. I've got a bunch to get to with that, but I wanted to talk about real quick. I've heard you talk about age 27. You kind of went through a spiritual, I think you called it a Saturn return.
Yeah, that thing about Saturn return is that I'm not a huge astrology man at all. I know people who are like expert on it. And if I need to know something, I'll ask them. I did try to learn it, and I just went, got really into it for like about 3 weeks, and I went, oh, I don't care. And it's just when people start going, oh, it's Mercury retrograde, I want to hit them.
Right.
Because it's like, your life is just it's a bit shit. That's what it is. It's not that. What's the comic code on this podcast? Can I curse? Can I not?
Oh, please.
Do I have to be?
Go.
Yeah.
Anything you need. Yeah.
Right. That's fine. Yeah. So like the Mercury retrograde and all this kind of stuff, it's a bit kind of. I don't know. It's I can take it or leave it. It is woo woo, and I'm definitely up for some woo woo and stuff. I think it can. It's like, oh, right, we'll go into this. It's like, say it's something like a demon, right? And you can go, I'm not necessarily agreeing or think that demons are real in the sense of that there's a hellspawn an autonomous spiritual entity as a demon.
Okay.
But that's not to say that they can't have an impact or work as if they're real or something like that. Kind of that. It's like people, demons do plague people and all that, and it's not kind of downplayed. Oh, it's all in your mind. It's just that's all in your head. It's to kind of up how we view ideas, that I think they're way more powerful than we give them credit for, and to kind of to poo-poo something as merely all in your head or as an idea is kind of it's not, that's not what I think. It's much more than that, kind of in the Jungian sense of your collective unconscious. There's all of these things. So while I say that I don't think demons are real, or I don't think Mercury retrograde is real, it can act like it's real, and it can have effects as if it's real, which is the thing that I really like about chaos magic. Is this? It's the acting as if bit of chaos magic that that's I find the most powerful of it. That doing something as if that's doing something and acting as if that's where the power is often leads you to where the power is. Yeah, and that's the thing. So like we're saying about the astrology, that's way off. I'm still haven't getting back to Saturn return. So it's just the astrology. So that like while I don't think it works probably in the way, I don't think it works in the way that it's meant to work, but I think it works.
Sure. Because
you're acting as if it works, and therefore it works. But the only thing you have to avoid then is the self-fulfilling prophecy of, say, oh, every time Mercury's in retrograde, my computer breaks.
Right.
And then the computer breaks every time Mercury's in retrograde, and Mercury's going, nothing to do with me, bro. That's all on you.
I call it the Freddy Krueger effect. The more you believe in it, the more powerful it gets.
Well, sure, yeah. I think, but then the thing has to be asked, that where did that original belief come from? Did someone just make it up, or is there some grain of truth in it, and therefore a pattern is developed out of it, or so you don't know. Like, see, it's easy to dismiss it all out of hand, but maybe there is. So anyway, Saturn return is basically when you were born. Saturn is in a particular place in your horoscope. It's in your whatever your. What's that word? The wheel
house.
Thing. Not horse. House. Well done. Yeah, it's in one of your houses, so it's a particular thing. And it takes the orbit of Saturn takes 27 years for it to return back to where it was. So every 27 years, it's in the same place in the universe as it was. Not in the same place in the universe because the actual solar system is moving around the universe, but it's in the same place in the solar system as it was 27 years, and it marks. Astrologically speaking, marks significant points in people's lives that seems to act as if it's true, in the sense of it returns to 27, and you have that whole musician thing where that the doll die at 27.
Yeah, 27 club.
So I mean, you can dismiss it, but you can also point to loads of cases for it, and it's
right.
it seems to be a case that when Saturn, who is he's kind of like the harsh kind of winter of astrology. Like he's the bad guy in many ways, but like be on the good side of Saturn, and he's good. It's not as easy as good or bad guy, but he's definitely a harsh master. And
I always think of the Goya painting, the Saturn eating his son.
Eating it, like he ate his children because all these things. But it's so he's like the bad father in the same way as you have the terrible mother. It's that kind of the harshness, that kind of thing. But he limits you to, or puts pressure on you, or is an oppressive type of energy, with the kind of thing of that you grow out of it, or you get rid of all the crud that you don't need. It kind of purifies you, all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's easy to see him or cast him as the bad guy, but ultimately the idea being is that he's improving you as a person and he's destroying the things that you are holding you back, even if in the moment it feels like he's destroying your life, which effectively he could be.
Yeah.
So
Go ahead. Sorry.
go for it. No, go for it.
The reason why I brought it up, it's just a bell went off because, yeah, I mean, typically the same thing happened to me around 27, especially, it was like the end of my desert days, as it were.
Right.
Yeah. So if you could explain what went down for you and what led you here.
Yeah. So basically, the kind of thing that happens is that what seems to happen to a lot of people around the age 27 and then again at 54 or whatever, but it can also happen just at the end of any decade, when you're getting closer. Like 30 is a huge thing when you're young because, it's the first kind of point where you go, I'm old. And then you're, as you get older, you go, I was so young. But it's so it can mark, a period where you go, well, what have I done with my life? What am I doing with my life? And what had happened to me is that I'd wanted to be like the rock star. I wanted to be the famous guitar player, tour the world, be the, envy of millions, all of these things, as is the teenage want of so many people. And I continued it into my 20s, and I was actually in bands, did record albums, did go on tour, did all things, but it was like all in a kind of local hero type stuff. The local hero does well, did some tours in Germany and, recorded CDs and all that before it was a thing that you recorded. Back in the days where it, like CD burning or being able to make your own CDs was out about 2 weeks. It wasn't just the way it was. It was a big deal and cost a lot of money to do. Like, yeah. So it was that, and then what happened was I ended up being a sound engineer because it's all well and good to try to be a rock star, but you still have to eat and you still have to pay rent and you still have to do these things. So it was kind of easy to fall into it. It was something I was good at. It was not really something I ever wanted to pursue. I was really into recording and just kind of studio stuff, but not ever to make the career out of it, recording other people or being a producer or something like that. But it was to, so that I could record my own music. But having done all that, I then, it lended very easily to doing like live sound and that kind of thing. But what happened ultimately is I did that on and off, but mostly it's about 10 years. So in between, I started doing, it was about 18, I first started doing sound, but I really, around 22, 23, I was more or less my full-time job. Like I'd leave Thursday morning and come home, Monday morning, having been, driven around in the country in the back of a van, playing all these different venues and doing sound. And it just took its toll on me, and I hated it, and I hated my life, and I hated everyone around me, and I hated music. And it's more than just because it was more than just I wanted to be a rock star, and I was then you're looking at people playing rather than playing. It was more than that. It was the tedium of it's the same. People forget when they go to see a band that they're doing exactly the same thing every night. So it's so the lighting guy and the sound guy has seen and heard that joke a million times. That is off the cuff. That improvised guitar solo is the same improvised guitar solo as it has been for the last 3 years. And these kind of things, and it just gets so tedious and boring that the only time it ever gets exciting as a job is when something catastrophically goes wrong. Like a speaker blows up, a guitar player blows up, or whatever it is, And so it was a nightmare, and I hated it. And I was about 27, and my own band I was in had absolutely fallen apart because of all of the reasons that every band falls apart, because of women, musical similarities, egos, all those things. All the, there's no new story in that, like that kind of thing. So it felt like an awful lot of things were kind of closing down and stuff. And I was as if I was at some point, there was this choice that had to be made. You either stop doing all this, or you're doing it for the rest of your life. And if I'm doing this for the rest of my life, that's I really don't want. That's horrible. I don't want to do that. But that's the kind of decision. So you can either stop before it becomes just a thing that you're 65 and you had, oh, I probably shouldn't have done that for that. That's quite as long. You're in the rut then at that point. So at least at that point I was able to go, right, I'll try to get out of this. And I was just trying to think of what was the time, what did I want to be before I wanted to be before the glamour of wanting to be a rock star became. And I was huge into comics and I loved drawing. And I kind of, my whole love for drawing disappeared because I had a really terrible art teacher and who literally didn't teach me anything but art and kind of didn't like comics and would put that down and kind of put that out of my wouldn't encourage that, and it was kind of just a terrible art teacher, and so kind of my love for art kind of just completely waned because it's like, well, what's the point? And it's like at that point going to art college, I had no money to go to art college, and I had no interest in getting massively into debt for something that at this point I was just kind of, the love had completely gone. Or had been taken out of me. So I was thinking about that and going, well, that was the thing that I really loved and enjoyed and all that. So I started drawing again. Well, actually, what I started doing is I started coloring comics again. In that I'd get scans of like Tank Girl or something like that, and I was in Photoshop, just because I didn't think I'd be a good enough artist to be able to draw comics. Because I hadn't drawn in 10 years. And all that, so I says, "Oh,
it's ingenuitous." Yeah.
So I said, "No, well, maybe I could try coloring stuff because I knew Photoshop kind of well enough from doing band posters and that kind of thing." And then very quickly I went, "Oh, sure, I'll try drawing." And then because ultimately what I wanted to do was write comics, and I know that it's next to impossible for a writer to break into comics or to do comics because you're always reliant on an artist, and it's like everyone has a great idea and a writer. So I said, right, I can either do that again and spend the next 20 years being frustrated, or I can learn to draw and at least draw my own things. So I was a writer who drew at that point rather than an artist who also wrote. So that was because my goal was I wanted to write comics, and I knew that the only way to do that was to actually learn how to draw this thing. That's kind of, I was good at drawing when I was a kid, whatever, and I got, despite my art teacher, I ended up getting the top marks in my final exams, leaving school and stuff. So there was a bit of, I was going to say talent. I'm not completely sold on the idea of talent because it seems that the most talented people are the people who spend the most time doing it. But there can be, a proclivity of something like that in people. I think it's different in sports and in physical. People do seem to be born, be able to run faster than other people. And no matter how much I practice, I was never able to run that fast. But with things like, say, art or even guitar or music, you can definitely become well above average if you spend the time. I suppose it's the genius level thing. Why Steve Vai is Steve
especially
Vai.
With magic too. Right?
Well, to a point, yeah. But it's like natural born witches, I suppose, and this kind of things. I still I would be hesitant to say that people couldn't, you couldn't do something because you weren't born that way. What I think is more likely with magic is the kind of, when you play an RPG, a computer RPG like Skyrim or something. And you can be a mage, or you can be a warrior, or you can be this kind of thing. I think what might happen with magic is that people have certain abilities or classes in a sense, like where you have you're better at divination than you are at sigils, and you can struggle with magic because all you want to do is sigils, but really your character class could be divination. And it's funny, I've said that a few times, and I've seen other people say it as well recently and stuff. I think it's a nice idea, but it's obviously I don't think there's character classes in magic though, so don't take it too literally from me.
Your entire story is just so enlightening because there's so much ditto from me in that you've put into words basically what my life has been up until that point. So it's good to hear someone else that kind of got out of the music rut, as it were, and forged ahead with their kind of deeper callings. Yeah,
the unfortunate thing is I got very stuck then in the comic rut for a while.
Right. So well, and funny enough, I am as well. Yeah. But what you're telling me is I need to draw.
You need to learn to draw, or you need to find some way of the key to
visualizing.
No, not necessarily visualizing. The key to all of this thing is to become as self-reliant as you can as possible.
Right.
Because if you're sitting around waiting on other people for your dream to happen, your dream's never going to happen. And I don't mean that in a cold kind of, your dream will never happen. It just won't, because
right. No, totally.
Just just do it. Like, and that by that I could also mean like find your artist, like find that in the way Grant Morrison found his Frank Quitely, or whatever.
Yeah.
Do that. That doesn't necessarily mean you have to draw, but don't, stop waiting around for the thing. Do whatever it is, that thing that has to be done, that whatever the next stage is. But it doesn't have to be the big stage, it's that I really like this statement, which is tend to the part of the garden that you can reach, so do the bit that you can do the next thing. What is the next thing you have to do, and do it, and then, go from there. But the problem with comics, and that will always be the problem with comics, is that 95% of people who read comics also want to make comics.
Right.
And that doesn't happen really in any other industry, particularly in an industry that is ridiculously small to start off with anyway. It's like...
Yeah.
I don't know the figures, but like the top selling comic isn't millions, the way, certainly not in the way it used to be in the 90s and stuff like that. And...
Right.
Comics that are considered bestsellers now would have been cancelled after 2 issues 20 years ago because the sales just weren't there or whatever. So not only is it a very small kind of gene pool in that both the customer and the creators are pretty much want to be the same thing. There's not that huge of a market for it anyway, particularly if you step outside the genre of superheroes.
Right.
Because it's so synonymous with comics that it's superheroes, that almost that when you think of comics, you think of superheroes rather than, it's like, imagine if every film was a Western and that films had only ever been Westerns and had just become so associated with Westerns that people would go, I'm not really into Westerns, so I'm not going to watch films, which is what's happened with comics.
Yeah.
To a large
that's a good
extent.
point. Yeah. I had read the other day too, that like, all of the favorite writers, even on bigger, superhero books, are basically like offered those projects. They never get the books they want to work on.
Well, the biggest eye opener I've ever come across was when Mark Millar was looking for an artist for what's that? Not Hit Girl. What's Hit Girl from?
Kick-Ass.
Kick-Ass. He was doing Kick-Ass 2, and he put up. I'm looking for an artist for Kick-Ass 2, or maybe it was Hit Girl, or something, whatever, a big project, whatever. And he says, send your samples to, in this forum post. And it was like 200 replies, and it was like, Jim, I'm 11, can't draw, followed by a guy who drew X-Men last week, looking for the same job, followed by a 16-year-old who was pretty good, but had years, and like where people. Pros in the industry, like top class, like people who are exceptionally artists who have like done, let's say X-Men, or did 12 issues of The Flash or whatever, had get on a forum, put up a couple of their pages beside 14-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 30-year-old people who can't draw, who were just having a laugh, and I was going, right, there's comics.
Oof. Yeah. Well, good thing, it's like it's a passion for you too. I mean, it's I was looking at Holy Numbers, and it feels like you are channeling something quite deeper. And I wonder if, the confluence of art and magic, chaos magic, makes sense for me when I think of your work. Casting sigils and making, Grant Morrison's example, a hyper sigil, which is what I thought Holy Numbers was.
Well, definitely. Well, I mean, the thing about magic is that it is art, it's just a kind of a different approach in a sense to art, in that a way to look at it is kind of that there's people who there's this label type of thing that we have, or that we do to ourselves, where we kind of go, I'm a chaos magician, or I'm the kind of people, I'm a fireman, or I'm male, or I'm I'm non-binary, or I'm homosexual, or I'm heterosexual, and we have all these kind of labels and these kind of things, which is all good. That's fine. Not be whoever you want to be, all of those things. But it's kind of limiting in yourself as you go, I'm a chaos magician. Yeah, but what do you do? Oh no, I'm a chaos magician. No, but what do you do? Well, I'm an artist I'm an artist and a writer who uses the reality tunnel of chaos magic. Which I think is a better way to approach it than defining yourself as a chaos magician. Like, you could look at, say, Grant Morrison or Alan Moore, two of the huge comic, people who are both well known and who are both magicians as well. But they're not magicians, and that's it. It's this kind of, as you say, this channeling of that magic stuff in as part of their art, you know. And it's like if you're just going, the things that are like kind of really uninteresting are people who define themselves by what they are rather than what they do. You know, I'm a macho man, you know. Yeah, but what do you do? No, this is what I do. I walk around with my muscles, this, you know, and insult people. This is, you know, and you go, well, that's just not interesting. And it's, you know, it's not. It's like, but if you go, well, I'm a macho man who goes around insulting people, but I use this energy to, I don't know, create sculpture or something. You go, oh, well, now this is starting to get interesting, you know, because you've taken what you're defining yourself as and then channeling into some sort of creation rather than just sort of like a stagnant energy of existing as this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So when you say the sort of channeling thing of comics, I 100% see art as a kind of a channeling thing, but not in the kind of, you know, Abraham Hicks or Alice Bailey or channels type, you know, there's someone over your shoulder, or the Crowley kind of, you know, Book of the Law or any of things. That's fine, but that's just not what I'm talking about, you know. It's almost as if the way I would describe it is getting out of the way of it and letting it kind of, you know, it all sounds quite crap, you know, letting it come through you, you know, letting it flow through you, man.
I know, but there is some truth to it. I know, like, that's kind of been the big dichotomy when I see your work, is that you have such a pragmatist approach, you know, and you want to be sure not to give, you know, the adventures in the woo-woo, you know, too much of that. And I totally get that, but I wanted to, find where the line is for the woo for you.
It depends on the day, and it depends on
it's a constant struggle, right?
You see, well, as my wife always says to me, it is with that attitude. If you see it as a struggle, then it is. Well, a good way to look around it is to stop feeling you have to label these things, or, you know, pigeonhole them, or define them, or delineate them, or have them in boxes. In that, you know, you can be this today. Just the beauty and the glory of chaos magic that people forget about is that you don't have to be anything other than what you need to be in the moment to get the result you want. And that's the whole kind of principle of chaos magic. It's become slightly different, and people have kind of tried to put actual truth, in a sense, back into it, rather than, you know, the belief as a tool, which is the idea of that your beliefs are powerful in themselves as belief, and the belief is the kind of the agent of change, or the agent of power. You know, the acting as if this is true is where the power comes from, rather than the act itself. So you're saying it's a struggle to, where is the woo, or where's the line in the woo? It depends on what I'm doing. The line of the woo when I'm doing my taxes is very different from the line of the woo when I'm trying to create a character for a comic.
Totally.
You know, where you can go, oh, it's all, you know, just let it come through you and flow, and, you know, like, get out of the way of it. It doesn't really work when you're trying to sort out, is this an expense? Will I get away with this? You know, so it's like, it's not to say that both of those factors aren't, you know, part of me. It's like when you start to define yourself again, if you go, I am a reductionist materialist, and that's it, then you've closed off so much of the thing. You know, like, you can be, I'm a reductionist materialist when it comes to building my house, or, you know, certain views, or when it comes to, say, medicine, or, you know, does it work, does it not work? But we're not Vulcans. We're not, you know, we don't think, you know, we're not, science is kind of, it's a brilliant thing, and it's the best thing that's ever happened to us, but we've almost made it into a religion now. We've, you know, this scientism idea where, you know, it's become infallible. Right. And that we're able to view life or exist in the world scientifically, almost like the Vulcans, but we're not logical beings. We're feeling beings. We're emotional beings. And we've been, so science has come from that. I'm not down on science. I love science. Loads of my friends are scientists. Right. But it's definitely taken away the self-reliance, the self-trust, and the you know, that you are allowed to have your own opinions, because it's, you know, we're told we can't even trust our own senses. We can't even trust our own mind. You know, right. Anecdotal evidence is the worst kind of evidence, yet we can send people to prison on it. You know, and there's even to the point of that, to get over the hard question of consciousness. Well, that consciousness doesn't actually exist. It's just an epiphenomena of the brain. You only think you're conscious. Which, if that's, you know, that's fine. Then we again go back to the prison thing. If people aren't really conscious, then are they really responsible for anything to do? And we know they are, because we know we're living this life, we know they're responsible for it. But if you start saying the consciousness and, it's epiphenomena of the brain, you're kind of taking that away from it. So but it's interesting too, though. Then you look at, like it's Daniel Dennett's, he came up with not the idea, he's kind of pushed forward the whole thing of the consciousness as an epiphenomena of the brain, which just means it's a byproduct of the brain rather than using the fancy epiphenomena name. I mean, it's just something that happens while your body is trying to keep itself alive. It just so happens to have this thing that seems to be conscious of itself, but it's not.
So it's a symptom.
Or a byproduct, or just something that interesting that happened on the way, which is also interesting in that it's very, very similar to the Buddhist idea of no mind as well, where that they would equally say you are not your mind, your thoughts, or whatever, but different in that they don't say it's an epiphenomenon of the brain or byproduct. The mind to them is akin or similar to an emotion or to a sensation, where you would never think that you are the smell of your dinner, because right. that's a function of my body, it's separate. Or you hear a bird, you don't think I am a bird, but they would say equally you are not anger, or you're not the thought you have, but yet we have decided that we've associated ourselves with this particular thought, that is us. But they would say, my reading of it is that they would say other opinions of Buddhism are available, that we've just the fault lies in that we've associated ourselves with this thought, with this brain, this mind, this thing. But it's just as passing as unreal, or as all the other things. It's all part of the illusion, if you want. Which is interesting that both science and Buddhism has gone to the same conclusion in some ways.
Yeah, I was going to say this kind of idea of almost the like you were talking about the 40 servants and its inception on your website, and you had mentioned it's not an egregore.
No,
you don't consider it to have been channeled.
No, it's not an egregore, and strictly because an egregore is a group, is an entity made by a group.
Thought, yeah.
But that's not what people mean when they say egregore now. So it's like that thing when people say literally. That's right. The word. That's not what that word means. But now it's I know what you mean when you're saying it, and it's a dick move for me to then pretend I don't know what you mean. So when people say egregore, I go, well, it actually means a group thing. I know that's not what you're talking about. It's what people are actually talking about is that it's some sort of self-reliant, autonomous, sovereign. It's a being that has its own will. It has its own, autonomy. It can do its own thing. It can make its own decisions. And in that, 47, excuse me, aren't. And I don't.
Well, let's just launch into the 40 servants, because this is kind of an amazing addition to the divination / I would say like psychologically pragmatic approach to addressing the subconscious.
That's it. Well, and like at the heart of it, I was trying to be as pragmatic as possible with it, because things can become so convoluted and so intense. And, there's a lot of rules and baggage that go around an awful lot of these things, which is what the original, like Pete Carroll and Ramsey Jukes and Phil Hine, all these, but we're trying to get rid of. And we seem we're trying our best to put all this stuff back into chaos magic, and which is fine. That's fine. Let's not, we've possibly thrown out, a number of babies with some of this bathwater. And, maybe it is time, to bring some of this stuff back in or whatever, but not confuse it with the kind of the spirit of chaos magic, if you want to. And it's that whole thing of, UPG, which is an unverified personal gnosis, which is when you have a discovery about magic or about life or whatever, and then you demand that other people accept that as their gnosis and their thing. And I think there's a lot of UPG and chaos magic as the minute, including from myself. Like I'm not outside of this thing. I have my own opinions about it that I think, and other people are absolutely free to disagree and should disagree.
I mean, that's the whole point.
That's the whole exactly. It's the whole point. It's the whole point of it.
Yeah, because there's been some things personally over the years with chaos magic. It just hasn't had the mechanisms to answer for me personally. But
okay, can you give me some examples? Can you strap this.
There just some use of devotion or faith in certain things,
Okay.
outside of yourself and your own, personal wants
So
and
like
desires
like
and
a, like
affectations.
like some sort of like a bhakti devotion type thing, like the Hindu, like the Hare Krishna thing, like chanting.
Or yeah, just like the use and maybe like an inherent need for some of that.
Well, you see, well, there you go. There's your answer. Then, if people have a need for it, then they should certainly use it. And
Right.
but it's then making it a golden, a golden calf, or
Right.
making it the rule of whatever. Prayer works exceptionally well if you're into prayer. And
Right.
it's like the thing you have to remember too is that we're all being conditioned today, socially, and what we've grown up with and all of those things. And rather than trying to shun a lot of that stuff, what I've learned is that if you can kind of incorporate that stuff, it becomes way more powerful for you, because you've like say if
Exactly,
if
yeah.
ultimately when you question yourself that you do think there is a sky god or a guy with a beard sitting on a cloud, like that you just can't get past that thought, say because you've been indoctrinated since whatever. No matter what you do, until you can appease that angry sky god, if you think he's angry, you're not going to get past that. So you have to
Right.
find a way to do that. Whether that can either be to totally go and become Christian in a chaos magic sense of put on the clothes of it, do it, act as if do that belief shifting, that whole thing, and
Yeah.
go with it. And if it works, or go the other way and become a Satanist. And really get that out. Get hang around with Aunt LaVey for a while. Join the the Satanic Temple or whatever it is. Did Raymond Buckland's The Discovery of Witchcraft? That's the one where he talks about saying the Our Father backwards and doing all these taboos, or the destroying it or whatever. But you can't ignore these things. So
Right.
back to if you have part of you that has a need for like devotion or adoration of some sort of God figure, then rather than trying to not do that, do it. But just choose a better God to do it with. Pick. Don't go with the angry sky god who's jealous and who's a worse human
No.
than you've ever met.
Who somehow cares what you do with your penis.
Oh, whatever. He's a weird dude. He's really weird.
Yeah.
But if ultimately you feel you're being judged by that guy, you have to sort that out, because ignoring it is, or pasting over. Because what happens, and this isn't, I'm not pointing at all left-hand people, or I'm not talking about all Luciferians, but there's a huge part of people who leave Christianity, become Luciferians, and what they're basically doing is switching the name of Jesus for Lucifer.
Oh, totally.
the
Yeah, there's that
Lightbringer.
Jason Louv quote where he
What?
talks about you wouldn't wear the Darth Vader mask to rebel against Star Wars.
Sure, yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
Like, but it's also, it's like literally like he did the you're using the same characters. You've just switched them over where no,
Right.
that Satan is actually the good guy and Lucifer is the Jesus figure. He's the light bringer, whatever, and Jehovah is the real Satan and Jesus is the and you kind of go, no, you're playing exactly the same game. Only you prefer the aesthetics, you prefer the clothes, you prefer the wearing black.
Right.
It's this kind of thing. And it's like going, but that's a perfect example of going, in a sense, a chaos magic approach. If you know what you're at, in that. That might work better for you, and that's okay. Once you're aware of it, that you're not just blindly, sheepishly doing the same thing, under a different name. But if you have that kind of need for a Jesus, for a God, for that thing, Satanism might be for you, Luciferianism might be for you, and you might get a lot out of it. But not to dismiss, but just be aware of that. All right, I have these, these codes in me that have been indoctrinated into me, and I can't get past them. So instead, I'm going to use them. And then, you may hang around with Lucifer for the rest of your life. You may not. It may change, may get you past those bits. So anyway, it's your thing, for your devotion thing. Once you don't demand that, this is the one true way of chaos magic, whatever. But if you have a devotional aspect, do it. I assume you don't, and that's why it
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and like that's the thing, I felt kind of a bit of a Ronin, but I guess most chaos magicians or chaos practitioners assuredly do, and that's kind of the whole point, is to like you said, to visit and to live in the shoes for a bit, and
that's it.
see what works. Yeah,
but not to take any of it like that whole thing.
Not to take it for granted. Yeah, and to show respect.
Yeah, but also to do it wholeheartedly. Like it's acting as if means you actually believe it when you're doing it. It's not that
Right.
you're pretending. It's you. If you like this belief shifting thing is where you take on other thoughts or other ideas and then see the world from that perspective. You actually have to take on those beliefs and thoughts, or else you're not actually doing the full thing. It's like
Totally.
I will take on and pretend I like country music and I will listen to country music. But because I'm pretending, I'm not actually getting it. But if you could get to your point where you actually make yourself enjoy country music, I don't know how you do that. I don't know if that's physically possible, but
Anything before 1975.
right. Well, there you go.
Yeah.
It's a completely different experience than pretending. And from that point of view, you can make a different decision. It's like, how would you come up with it? Like, what's a good belief shifting type thing? Right. One of the things that if you can use a God form or whatever, right? And so this would be like an invocation. So there's two things. There's an evocation and an invocation. And basically an evocation is you're evoking something. So it's something outside of you. You're not taking it in. So it's like you're calling on a god. And that whole goetic thing would be evocation. It's outside of you. You know, you're calling the demon into the triangle of power, and you're protected in your circle. Right. So that's an evocation. An invocation is when you take a god form or whatever. It doesn't have to be god form, but traditionally a god form into you. So that would be kind of like the voodoo or the hoodoo kind of thing. You know, where they become possessed by the Loa and stuff like that. So that's an invocation. But invocation is just kind of another word that, you know, like in the NLP sense of modeling. So you can look at someone that's like someone who's successful, or, you know, who has attributes or skills that you want, and you can model that person and try to take on those attributes, whatever. So that's the same as invoking with a god. So you would take...
And that's neuro-linguistic programming.
Yeah. So it'd be like you would take in, say we wanted the... pick a god, Apollo, the sun god, right? The sun god. So you would invoke heaven. You would start thinking as you imagine that Apollo would think. You start seeing sunlight radiate around you. You would listen to music that evokes that kind of idea of sun. You could have a very brightly lit room. You could possibly be looking into a light. You know, you bring in Apollo to the exclusion of all other things. And when you get to the point where you feel like Apollo, then you look at your problem, whatever it is, and you say, from this perspective, what would I do? That
it's method acting.
To a certain extent, but it's different in method acting because that's still kind of implying a kind of a pretense.
Yeah.
In the moment, you are Apollo. That's what you're aiming for. And so the belief shifting thing is like, so from the point of view of Apollo, you can make a decision. And from the point of view of someone who loves country music, you can make the decision. Where you can also then go from the point of view of someone who really thinks Jesus is the greatest thing in the world. What would that point of view be? Is that a helpful point of view for the situation I'm in right now? Because sometimes it could be. And then act from that point of view. And, you know, so that's when like the belief shifting and taking the thing, you know, because you were asking me where's the line of the woo-woo, and you can kind of go, well, it depends on what I'm doing. It hasn't, but Jesus could be very effective in some problem I'm trying to, having a view of Jesus, or an angry sky god might be great if you need, you know, to in some way feel that there should be vengeance in the world, or there should be, you know, could help you cope with getting over loss, or seeing the world in the state it's in, or people getting away with doing terrible things. You could get into a state where you could understand, is this angry sky god who's going to sort them out, and you can leave that kind of behind you. But then the next day, you don't still have to believe about the angry sky god.
I guess that kind of relates to a question I had. In the 40 Servants, you have like a companion grimoire.
Yes.
Which basically helps kind of charge or ritualize 40 Servants.
Yeah, well, it just kind of it explains what each, because there's 40 different archetypes, or 40 different ideas, or 40 different servitors, and a servitor is basically, it's kind of it depends. You can't really start with servitors. There's sigils, there's servitors, there's talismans, and a sigil is kind of that idea of that when you take one intent, or one wish, or one desire, and you turn it into a magical glyph, and then in some way you activate it. But it's kind of usually just a one-off thing, like I want $20, whatever. That's kind of a one-off.
Right.
Whereas a talisman would be some sort of item or a glyph or a drawing or something that you've imbued with whatever you wanted to have, but is more of an ongoing lucky charm, say. So you get a lot of like lucky charm talismans or increase good fortune or protection type of thing. So it's more of an ongoing. So you could still have a sigil but it's more, an ongoing protection thing. So it's more of a talisman.
Right.
But a servitor then kind of has some sort of more personality, if you want. There's more of a theme to it. So like it wouldn't be just I want €20 or I want protection, but it becomes like in, say, for example, the protector, like a kind of personification of that kind of archetypical energy. So it's different in all of those things, but they all are still working on the same kind of foundation of ideas or thought forms. So a servitor is strictly speaking a thought form. People mix them up with tulpas, which are created kind of personality, almost like an invisible friend, but
Right.
done on purpose. And they're the things that can get out of hand, that can start running amok. And it's also not a tulpa. That's a kind of another one of those words like literally or egregore that people use wrongly. A tulpa is it's a different thing, but in the sense of if you go on Reddit and look up tulpas, this is what it'll be talking about. And they can kind of, when people say, "Oh, servers run amok," or they ruin your life, or you need to destroy them, it's more this kind of personal thought form, imaginary friend thing that has got out of hand. But usually those type of things, when people talk about servitors getting out of hand or ruining their lives, their lives are kind of chaotic anyway. It's not.
Right.
There seems to be people who have a lot of drama with servitors, or people who seem to have a lot of drama in their lives anyway. So
Well, it's that, displacement of blame too. Yeah.
of course, yeah, and God,
Yeah.
we love doing that. I mean,
Oh yeah.
that's one of our favorites. So,
That might be a prime definition of woo.
yeah. Oh well, yeah. I mean, definitely, yeah. But like the first kind of the major kind of, if you want, thing that I find, what I would propose in chaos magic or in cult in general would be take responsibility for your life, for all of it,
Right.
even the bits that aren't your fault,
Yeah, I
and come
wanted to ask
from
too,
that point of view. Yeah. Sorry.
because with the magic part in each of your 40 servant descriptions, you have a baneful magic kind of section.
Yeah, in some of them, that's the old PDF version of it. I took that out for that. It's not in the grimoire, the baneful stuff. Some of it is, no, but it's because people like to use magic for baneful means.
Right. I was wondering,
Yeah.
if you had like
I personally don't. I don't at all. And the reason why I don't, I'm not because I don't think the work. I certainly think curses work. They work as well as any of it do.
right.
It's because I would rather get rid of that situation than have
Yeah.
hang around. So if like you can curse someone, but you've kind of now created a new relationship with them, and that's hanging around for a bit longer, or you can banish them, get rid of them, and then it's all gone.
Right.
There's this rune, the runes, there's what Gebo it's called, or Gebo, Gebo, and it's the idea of gift, and there's an element of it in the 40 servants. He's the giver, and it's about this thing that happens that when the whole kind of thing of Gebo or the giver is that you're receiving something. But you see, the part of thing that you tend to forget about when you're receiving something is you've now gone into a relationship between the receiver and the sender, and it has to be a reciprocal, that you in some way are now beholden to this person, so that there's a relationship built every time something is given. So if you take that then from the point of view of cursing someone, and you're giving them the curse, whatever, you're building a new relationship with them that is sustaining and prolonging the situation in many ways. While the curse may work and things may get worse for the person or whatever the curse is, you're still involved in it, and you haven't disassociated yourself from the situation, and so has a likelihood of it either exacerbating the situation or at least prolonging your pain or your annoyance or your general kind of hanging around that problem. So baneful magic, grand, that it kind of, there's plenty of stuff that you can do about it. I'd just rather get rid of people or rid of situations.
Yeah. So you were just basically including it to be, I guess, inclusive of all kind of magical path.
Yeah, and it's just kind of it was kind of from the idea of to be complete in one sense. So while I didn't take it out for. So in the Grimoire, it's rather than having a section or whatever, it's mentioned in it if I think it's relevant. Like 'cause some of the 47s would be very useful in baneful magic. So you'd be kind of remiss, and also because I'm not goody tissues either. Like I'm not, like if you really annoy me, I am going to fuck with you. But it's so I'm not to kind of white light everything. And I mean, I did, before Chaos Magic, before Grant Morrison, my kind of whole thing would have been more a new agey type of approach, and that's all.
I wanted to get into that because you actually studied like Eastern medicine or energy work.
Yeah, I did. My college, when I went to college in my mid-20s, again getting to the whole point of trying to get out of the sound engineer thing.
Right.
I did. It was holistic health studies, so we did like alternative medicine, Reiki, aromatherapy, reflexology, Indian head massage, kinesiology, all of these kind of things, So there's again, like it's a kind of they're all wonderful things, and but there's no curing cancer from aromatherapy. You know what I mean? Like, and that's our Reiki. And the thing I have with Reiki is that I don't know what way it is. In different parts of the world, but over here it seems very much a money grabbing situation, where you get, and if it's as powerful as people make it out to be, then you really shouldn't be learning this over 8 hours over one weekend, like that kind of stuff. But it's an eye opening kind of thing, and there's certainly something to energy. In my opinion, I don't think it's Reiki, but again. I've seen people do weird and wonderful things with Reiki that's just, that's freaky. The once I seen someone almost look like their spine was being realigned and they could walk better than that.
Wow.
And I mean, like, I don't know, that mind over matter, placebo, all of those things.
Right.
But I mean, placebo is such a strong force and all that kind of things that how do you engage a placebo response without some sort of agency or without some sort of lie? Or whatever, you can't kind of fool yourself into a placebo. So
right.
So there has to be some sort of thing. But I don't know if it's just placebo or if there is. But there seems to be some sort of energy thing because you certainly can feel energy at different times. Like 100% can walk into a room and know there's been an argument, even if people are being the happiest and pretending. You just know, and because it feels. There's some sort of feeling of it, or you can you can. You just know, and it's one of those things that you can't prove, and your reductionist materialists laugh and scoff at you or whatever. But it's like it's not human experience to not feel that. Whether I can prove it or not, everyone knows it. Everyone has an experience of it. Everyone can talk about it, but it's not true. So it's something. Yeah, totally. It's something.
And would you compare that to kind of what you talked about was kind of like the current coming through you when you accepted the 40 servants?
No, because that kind of is kind of implying again getting into a proper channeling type thing. No, it would be more the coming true thing was the same as when I was doing the comics or writing out of anything. Is getting out of the way and not bringing too much my nonsense in my brain to it, and just doing.
Sort of like an automatic writing kind of
ish, but again, it's not that. But it's not that. It's kind. Right. It's like just one way of it. Don't overthink it, and don't try. Don't try and second guess. If there's plenty of things that have happened when I've written or with the 40 servants where I go, I don't really understand this right now, but I know I will. And I thought I was insane for that because it usually walks out and I went, oh, right, that's what that is. Until I heard Alan Moore talking about when he was writing Watchmen and different other things where he was going, there'd be some particular scene or there'd be something. And he goes, well, I don't know what that is exactly, but I know it has to be, it's part of this story. And then it eventually was like a really intrinsic part of the ending or something. It had to be there, but he didn't realize it till he got to that point. So you can either think of that as some part of your brain or your subconscious knows something that your conscious brain doesn't know and is, giving you a message. So you have to get out of your conscious way, your conscious brain. Or, he has this idea of idea space, which I find fascinating and I think is brilliant. Are you aware of that idea? You know that?
Yeah.
So
I
basically,
mean,
to people who don't, it's that there's like a field, if you want, of ideas around us. So, like the subconscious, or that would be like the astral
the
plane.
collective unconscious.
Sure, yeah, the astral plane or imagination or whatever it is, and then around us there's different ideas, I don't know, a host of other things. But Alan would say that the easy ideas are the ones that are close to us, but the bigger ideas are the ones that are further back, and they're the ones to go for. And then there's the idea that people don't have ideas of people, so that that thing of that you can have an idea, and then in 2 years' time you would find that someone else has done something with that idea. And
Right.
that would be
Yeah.
the kind of thought that idea says, hello, will you manifest me? And you ignored it for 2 years and it went, well, fuck you. I'm going to find someone who will actually, materialize me or whatever.
David Lynch talks about that in Catching the Big Fish.
Yeah.
That ideas are fish, and if you don't catch them, they move upstream.
That's a great book. People should definitely, and you should listen to the audiobook of it, because it's even creepier, because halfway through, someone just starts breathing for no reason for like 2 minutes, and then it goes away. It's so weird.
What? Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah, didn't Mitch Horowitz do that book, or he had something to do with it?
Oh, well,
anyways.
I don't know. No, the one I listened to, it was David Lynch himself.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk about how you are feeling with the 40 Servants catching on as big as it has so far. In the Facebook group, you have close to 3,000 people who are intently kind of discussing and talking about their different, takes and practices with it. And I just wanted to know what your feeling is about it kind of becoming something outside of maybe what you intended.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because it was like when I did it, I had come to the point where I was talking about this. Funny enough, at the beginning, I got into the comic rush that I had been in the thing, and it was kind of coming. It felt like it was coming to the end. There was things falling apart personally. There was it looked like the kind of thing I was doing, the self-employment art thing, wasn't going to last much longer. I was running out of money. Things were on the horizon, and I had a couple of months left where I could kind of do something. So I says, well, I'll do something that I would be interested in, and something I would use, and something that, just for me, this is my last hurrah, just do something just for myself. Whereas there would always be this kind of second guess, and even with comics and stuff, even no matter how personal or how much they mean to, that you're still kind of trying to market them in one sense, or make them appealing to other people. Whereas with the 40 Servants, I 100% didn't. And what I thought would happen, because Holy Numbers did really well, the comic, and then the one after that, Them, which is probably my favorite thing I've ever done, it just bombed, absolutely, horrifyingly bombed, that it just knocked an awful lot out of me. It took me a while to get past it. So it was when I did. So it came to the point then that when I was doing the 40 Servants, what I thought would happen would be something similar to what had subsequently happened with comics, was that you put an awful lot of effort in. You'd spend a year or whatever it is doing something, and then 10 or 20 people would be interested, and 2 weeks later, no one would care. So that was kind of the world I was presenting the 40 Servants to. I thought, this will be cool. I'll get a cool tool out of it. 10 or 20 people will be into it. I might make enough money to buy a new PC game or pay, the electricity bill. And then after a couple of weeks, I'll go out and I'll get, I'll start my real life as, as a bin man or something, because, now I have to grow up and get a real job, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
So it was it was a totally selfish act, last hurrah, do something I would want. So it's totally a system based for me. It's like people say it's very heteronormative, which it is, because I'm a heterosexual. It's from a male point of view, like the carnal in it, which is the representation of sexual energy, is female, because a naked man wouldn't have that feel to it for me. That's not to say that a naked man shouldn't have that feel for other people. It's just, because it was from my perspective or whatever.
Right. Yeah, this is your personal magic.
Yeah, my thing. And it was like looking around at all these things that have become really more complicated. The chaos magic had become more complicated. There was all the, people worried about cultural appropriation, which is a thing and you should be worried about it. But it's kind of a hindrance in many ways, because, we're all human. We're allowed to talk to each other and, pick up on ideas. But then there's, that whole thing of that you should never use stuff that you're not indigenous to or you're not part of, because it's kind of that way. I think there's a fairness in that, where Gordon White has a good kind of stance in it, where he would say never do something that a normal person in that society wouldn't be allowed to do. Like, you don't call yourself a priest of Cyrus, because the normal person in a society wouldn't be. There's training and all involved that you have to have a lineage, all those type of things. But praise ISIS if you want, or whatever.
Right.
So all these things it all become very complicated, very thing, and I want to simplify it down. I want easy access to these things. I think they're ideas rather than actual spiritual entities. But that's, as I said, that's upplaying ideas rather than downplaying spiritual energies. I think they're every bit as important to act exactly the same way, to all intents and purposes. They're the same thing. It's just fundamentally, I think they're, if you want, an energy more than a person. So if I can take all these ideas and all these kind of archetypical things and put them in a way that's easy to use, easy to access, doesn't have all the kind of bullshit that goes with it, or all the kind of taboos or the rules or the baggage or any of that, and just make it really simple, that's something I want to use. But again, I thought maybe I'll put it out, a couple of people would be interested, people think it's cool, but ultimately no one would really care. But I was very wrong with that.
Yeah,
quite wrong with that.
Yeah.
So like within like a couple of weeks, it became obvious that it was more than, it wasn't going to be what I expected it to be. But I think it wouldn't have existed in such a way had I not approached it in that way. If I was trying to make a deck that everyone would love, or a system that everyone would love, and all that, it would have been terrible, useless.
Yeah.
No one would have been into it. But because it was so focused and I had an idea and didn't care if people liked it or not, didn't mind if people used it or not. It kind of, that's what I talk about when I'm saying get out of the way of it. Don't overthink, just do what it is. Let it be what it is. If you're writing a story, let the story be whatever it is, rather than trying to bring too much of your nonsense to it. Let it, in a sense, channel, let it come through, let it flow through it, let it be what it is, without trying to mold it into something else. And the 47 is a perfect example of that, because that's exactly what it was.
It seems like you tapped into that Jungian archetypal, consciousness. Was 40 an expected or an intended kind of number? Because 40 in and of itself is a pretty heavy magical number. So I was wondering if all the minutia was. It is, and it
isn't. It is in a magic sense, and it isn't. Like, best to explain, there's so many syncs. It was 40 when I did it. It was, I had a list of these and I probably won't remember them all. And there was, in like hoodoo, you have like the 4 thieves and you have like that kind of, so it was kind of, I wanted a name that was kind of cool like that, like sort of 40 servants, thought it was quite thing. When it came to it, one of the boxes that you could actually physically put them in, when you're making the boring part of doing these things, we actually have to physically put things together to sell them and all that. One of them was that you could only have 40 cards in it. So that was another sync. And it was kind of, but it was like, I'll dig it up somewhere, but there was like 10 things that had 40 around it that just kind of all synced together at one point, that it just, whereas individually, none of them really matter that much. It's the conglomeration of the whole thing that you kind of go, there's something interesting in that.
Right. Yeah, and these are kind of just synchronous kind of after effects? Or...
Yeah, magical echoes. That's what I would call them, where things kind of echo out into it, that just kind of, when you magically punch the air, it kind of reverberates around and hits off things and comes back in interesting ways. So it's yeah, definitely. If Grant Morrison's disinfo speech changed my life, the 47's changed it infinitely more.
Well, it's incredible. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me all the way from Ireland.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the conversation. It was a bit rambly and tangential. But
I love it.
Yeah, but that's it. Like, I mean, that's the way I am. If you ever listen to my podcast, it's way worse than this, man. I just go off and, sometimes don't come back. And that's just, that's the way it is.
No, it's perfect. And where can, other than Adventures in Woo, is it adventuresinwoowoo.com?
That's it. That's just the best place to get it. There's all the stuff, the 47 stuff's there, including you can totally use the 47s for free. All of the stuff is there. You can, all of the card meanings, all of the magic stuff. You can, there's like a gift deck where you can click on it and it'll give you a quick, you can download a real low res version of it just to get you going, see if you're into it or whatever. But like,
I love that.
There's way more stuff, if you actually want to spend money and all that kind of thing. But everything is kind of in Adventures in WooWoo. There's a YouTube channel that I just finished the video course on the 40 Servants, which is basically an introduction kind of magic, chaos magic, explaining all the different models of magic and what the 40 servants are, and then a video for each of the servants explaining them, and they're all up there. Again, that's all free. Podcast is free. It comes out every week.
Very cool. And your Patreon.
Oh, the Patreon, yeah, that's not free. But if people want to help out and keep me doing these things or support us, there's the Patreon there, and in return I do lots of stuff over there. We do group rituals and all that kind of stuff. But it's not like a premium thing, or it's not like a membership or whatever.
You're very generous with your work.
Yeah, it's everything's there. I think magic should be for everyone and all those type of things. But at the same time, make it available if people want to give you money. They can give you money. It's balance is key in all these things.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks, man.
This here Pragmagick podcast is brought to you by Portland, Oregon's open source art religion and Pragmagick Art Collective, We the Hallowed. For more information, please visit wethehallowed.org or support these fine, pious individuals at patreon.com/wethehallowed. Remember, that's hallowed like saintly. HALLOWED. Thank you, and hold on.